think the Northerners even begin to understand that link as well, and they realize, you know, that, and I think one of the outcomes of the Civil War, the fact that after the Civil War, the federal government has been transformed, and there is no doubt that the federal government is supreme over the states. That is one of the legal outcomes of the Civil War, because they say, you know, we've ended the institution of slavery, but we are also ending the rationale for defending slavery and defending the extension of slavery, because states' rights is wrong. It leads to disunion. It leads to secession.
Just to carry on with this a little bit, I mean, it sounds like what you're really saying is that if somebody wants to, you know, say, well, which is it? The real answer is that there's just different words for the same issue, states' rights and slavery. If you're talking about slavery in this context, you're talking about states' rights, and if you're talking about states' rights, you're talking about slavery. So it's really just, they can't be pulled apart in this context. So there's no way to say it's one more or the other, because they're exactly the same thing.
Right, right, and you know, and I think what happens a lot of times too, and this is where the moral issue gets involved. The moral weight of this issue demands that slavery caused the Civil War. You know, but I agree. You know, the two issues just can't be divorced from one another neatly, because they are just so intertwined.
And it sounds like what you're also saying is that if you know, according to some miracle, you know, the South had given up slavery, then the idea of popular sovereignty might have been much stronger. But because that issue never went away, it was decided against popular sovereignty after the victory of the North.
Right, and I think one of the things that happens is, and Southerners recognize this, and Northerners recognize it. By the 1850s, the majority of the nation believes that slavery is wrong, because the majority of the nation lives in the North. And if you really wanted to go by popular sovereignty in its purest sense, then slavery would have been a goner. And the Southerners recognize that. I think in many ways they recognize that they are sort of swimming against the tide of the future. That, you know, most European nations have abolished slavery. You know, the United States is one of the last, you know, nations in the Western world to permit the institution of slavery, and that goes against, you know, I mean, that really cuts against the grain of what the South is trying to accomplish. And I mean, the economic rewards are too high by the 1850s, and it's a system, it's a way of life that they're tied to, and so they begin to monkey with the idea of popular sovereignty and change it and try to mold it in a different way to reflect their own view of the world and their own interests, and then the question becomes, at least in my mind, well, is it really popular sovereignty if you're you know, because you're telling somebody how they can go about governing themselves. That becomes the problem too. And so then, is it truly, you know, free consent of the governed?
I'd like to take this in a slightly different direction, because this was billed as a talk about what's a historian made. What's the history major defining future study of that? And you told your personal story about your question and how 6 years later it's kind of had an answer.
Maybe I answered it. Yeah.
And you'll share that when you publish the book. I'm very curious to know, did you have a cohort of fellow graduate students and friends? And you are obviously now teaching and heading into academia. Could you say something about some of the choices some of those people made?
Absolutely. I had, you know, here at Emporia State, you know, down here at the end of this hallway, I started with a cohort of master's degree students, and we were all trying to, you know, find our niche and figure out what we wanted to do and what really got us excited. And then when I moved to LSU and started my PhD work, we absolutely had that kind of camaraderie. And one of the really neat things about that is that you can bounce ideas off of one another. And I can't tell you how many times my ideas and my thoughts changed because of discussions I had with my office mate or with my friends, you know, around the dinner table or whatever. And you really bounce these ideas off of one another, and which in one sense is kind of strange because this stuff really becomes an intrusion into your life, you know, because you start talking about popular sovereignty, or my friend who is studying Indian removal in North Georgia. You start talking about this stuff kind of out of fun. And in one sense, you're like, oh my God, you know, what have we become? But in another sense, yeah, it's fun. It's exciting. And this is the stuff that really, you know, you get excited about this stuff. And you want to understand it. And you want to talk about it. And you kind of want to, I think anybody wants to glean to, what does it mean? You know, what does it mean for us today? And so, yeah, I think that's a crucial part of doing this. And if I can add one thing to that, too, I think one of the things I've learned about studying history itself, and that was, you know, that started here, and it's really continued, is that a lot of people say, well, it's a lonely profession. You know, you're in the archives doing research. And I spent a lot of time in a lot of places. I traveled to North Carolina and to Michigan and to Pennsylvania doing research. And yeah, you're alone and you're on the road studying and reading stuff. But at the same time, to me, it's a remarkably collaborative profession too, because yeah, you're going out alone and you're getting this stuff, but you're coming back home and you're talking to people about it. And the very act of writing, I think, is a very collaborative thing. You know, you have an editor or a dissertation advisor, and you know, but you also have friends and other people who are reading this stuff, and you're bouncing ideas off of them. And so it's, in that sense, it's not a lonely profession. And for an extrovert, that's the part I really enjoy. You know, is you know, talking about those ideas with people.
I think that's a really nice description of life in a PhD program with a cohort of similarly interested but non-competitive people, because by the time you get to the different dissertation stage, you're all doing different things. But it is a period in your life of real intellectual ferment and collegiality, I think, which I hope you find when you find a department somewhere that you get that collegiality. I wish that for you. It isn't always the same. It's not always as nice. But I wish that for you. But if people were interested in hearing what it was like to be in a PhD program, I think that's a good example.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people tend to think it's kind of isolating and confining. At least I've heard that from some people. That was not my experience. I thought it was really a really exciting, vibrant time, you know, and it's something that I'm still excited about, you know, as I've gone on and I'm teaching now. So. Thank you so much for coming out on Valentine's Day of 1985. Yeah, so, thank you so much.
Thank you.